So I must tell you, when I was a microbiology student at UC Davis, when I was much younger, just before the floodwaters receded, I was working on something, and there was a student next to me. Her name was Lisa. She was interesting. She would get panicked a little bit easily. So something you do in microbiology is you use a little glass hockey stick, we call it a spreader. Use it to spread bacteria across plates. And the way you sterilize it is you stick it in a little beaker of ethanol, you put it in the flame, you let the flame go out, you do your spreading, you put it back in the beaker. Well, she pulled it out dutifully, hit it. There's something else I forgot to do. She put it back in the ethanol and she forgot it was too hot and the ethanol went up in flames. Then she panicked and she knocked it over. And I was next to her and this wall of flame comes down the lab bench right toward me, and I got out of the way just in time. Well, when I graduated from UC Davis with a Bachelor of Science and then stayed there actually for a master's degree, I taught microbiology actually to the lab part to students. And one fine day, I was with a student and they were trying to isolate something that they'd actually taken from their own throat. And all of a sudden, and I knew what it was, and I turned around and said, "Okay, who lit their hair on fire?" And there was a young lady right in front of me, just as crestfallen as could be, and there was this ash all over the bench. And she looked at me, and she looked up, and she went. Now, she was okay, fortunately, but as many of you very well know, hair goes up like a cinder. And in the old facility we had, it was an old school microbiology lab. You were meant to work on your own in privacy and isolation. And if the instructor needed to help you, you asked for help, and the instructor was meant to just help you and not see anybody else. Well, now the very high sort of benches have been lowered. Now I can see everyone, and so I won't have to go to see who lit their hair on fire. In this facility, we will train future scientists who will go on to work at drug companies, some of whom will go on to graduate school and become physicians and physical therapists and physician's assistants. We're also training our first cohorts of nurses. Microbiology is a second-year course. We have our first second year. In fact, our second years, would you please stand up so we can see our brave group here? They're going to make some fabulous nurses. When we started this program, I still remember being in the president's office, and Al Kaufman was there. And I remember we looked at each other, we said, we don't want a program that's an assembly line type of program that just kicks people out. Microbiology lab is being cut from most nursing programs now. You'll have students, nurses who will order labs that they've never done. They'll get numbers back, they'll look at an antibiotic resistance test, and they won't know how fiddly those tests are. They won't know sometimes, that number is plus or minus a few millimeters. That can make a difference with treatment. They'll just look at those numbers and take them as gospel because they've never done the test. They won't look at a test and say, nitrate test, I need to order that for a urine sample. They won't know why that's important. They won't look at a blood plate. They won't know what beta hemolysis means. They won't know what alpha hemolysis means. These folks will see it. They'll know what that means. So when they order that test in their head, they'll have a mental picture because they've done it. It'll mean more to them. Erwin Shoggoff was the chemist who lost the race to discover the structure of the double helix. He became rather bitter. And he said of Francis Crick and Watson, he said, the only reason such slight men cast such long shadows merely shows how late it is in the day. That's a very bitter person. Also a very erudite slight, frankly. But I would say the only reason I cast such a long shadow is because I stand on the shoulders of giants. Joseph Jaworski was my friend. And it's through his through his largesse, his legacy, that this program, this nursing program has come online. And I would be remiss if I did not mention my dear friend Joe. It's because of guys like Dave Johnson who hired me, who shepherded me through the tenure process, that I'm the faculty member I am today. It's only because of the friendship and discipleship of guys like Chris Newhouse that I don't want to get in front of a student and want to strangle them. I am here because of the investment of people and because of the investment of the Weatherwax Foundation. Thank you, Weatherwax Foundation. Thank you, Linda Schaub. Thank you, Kevin Rose, for, I know nothing about construction. Thank you for being the guy to sit there and say, no, we can't do it that way because. Tyler, thank you. Instead of her saying, no, we can't do it that way, but we can do it this way. Thank you for your knowledge and your skill and for not just doing this with me, because when it comes to construction, I am inept. So my heart is really full of gratefulness. And Tyler, you don't know this, but when you guys were done for the day, I used to sneak in there during the summer, and I'd walk past each bench, and I'd pray for every student who's now at that bench. I'd pray for the men and women that they will become. I'd pray that they wouldn't light their hair on fire. I'd pray that this would be a place not only where they learn microbiology, but their hearts and minds would be captivated by the Word of God. That Jesus Christ would be their perspective, their only perspective for learning. And that they would be not just good nurses, not just good doctors, not just good graduate students, but the kind who transform their world, who transform their profession in a profound way. So my final words are once again just thank you.